Good morning, and I hope your day is absolutely amazing and your morning is amazing. For those of you on TikTok, I'm just starting a live stream. Live stream is at youtube.com/BJD online or at honkingforfreedom.locals.com. Come join us there, and I'm going to shut off TikTok because the Chinese government knows enough about me as it is. Well, I'm already worried about the Canadian government. I need the Chinese government following me around too. Clown world. All right, let me just set that to... yeah, I'm not even going to put anything. Whatever. I'm just going to post it the way it is. Sorry about the TikTok noise. We're going to have a conversation about TikTok sometime soon. Why anybody is using it, and I'm trying to figure out, I have to use it a little bit for promoting, but I'm just not comfortable with it, and I got to figure out a way around that. Who else is in here? Prairie Sun, good morning as well. Tao, good to see you. Megan. By the way, we got the first 3 feet of snow here in Saskatchewan yesterday, so enjoy your snowy day. Yeah, I heard there's a little bit of snow, and I actually, today, I'm going to be heading out to the U.S. in the truck, and from what I hear, most of the bridges or borders into the U.S. are closed, and Highway 90 is closed or something like that, or at least it was yesterday. I'm going to have to check the updates and see if I have to route around it. What a pain in the ass. Michael, good morning from Niagara, Ontario. Oh, Michael. Okay, perfect. Michael, can you do you happen to know if the Fort Erie Bridge to the U.S. is open? I heard the Queenston-Lewiston is open, and so at least I can go that way and hook on to the 104. But Peace Bridge to the States are closed. Ugh. All right, so this is going to be... it's going to be a long day. I was going to leave a little bit later because my unloading time tomorrow is in the late morning, but I guess I'm going to have to leave early, which is what it is. Well, there you go. That's people ask about trucker life. That's trucker life. I hope you're all doing awesome. I hope you all had an amazing Christmas with your family and your friends, and just want to go over a couple things first. Please like, share, and subscribe. The Freedom Coffee live stream where we celebrate the freedoms that we have and we work on expanding them in the future. And boy, do I have plans for 2023 to expand our freedoms in the future. Also, last week, I was on... was it last week? Last week and partially the end of the previous week, I'm not sure. That's when I did the Russell Brand interview. I did an interview on Not On Record, the podcast Not On Record that I helped produce with Diana Davison and Joseph Newberger. Many of you in the MRA space will know who Diana Davison is. I also did Richard Serrett on Saga 960 and Mark Petroni on Saga 960, where we talked about CBDCs and Bitcoin and the differences between the two and how they're polar opposites. This week, there's an interview coming out with me and Julian Newman. Julian Newman's in the startup space. Really good dude. Kind of I don't want to say complete opposite end of the political spectrum, but definitely on the other side, if you will. But we're trying to find that sign of cohesion, that we find things that we can agree on, freedom being one of them, which was great. And Rupa Subramania, some of you know who she is. She works for Barry Weiss, and she was president in the news conferences that I held at the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, and that seems to have helped give a boost to her career. She was already a freelance journalist for the National Post and still is, from what I understand. But she's now working with Barry primarily, and I think her podcast is hosted by True North or something, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, yeah, she's also True North. Yeah, from what I understand, that's just her podcast is hosted by True North. So, but anyways, yeah, that's Rupa. She is great, and we had an hour-long conversation, and it was really fun. It was actually, it was a lot of fun. Tao, okay, I'll get to your comments in a couple of seconds. I should ask you, what do you guys want to talk about? I mean, Bill, hi BJ. Have you ever met Alberta Dr. Amicus? He is well known. Almost 100 Canadian doctors that have died suddenly in the prime of life. No, I have no idea who he is. And you also notice I tend to stay away from the debate on the cerveza sickness medicine. Censorship is a problem on YouTube. But also I'm trying to reach people on the other side, some of them who are in support of the cerveza sickness medicine, and we may disagree, but we need to get as many people at least to coalesce on the values of freedom. And if we can do that, then we can at least start open dialogue. So I'm the open dialogue guy. That's what I want to focus on. I'm not a scientist. I love science, and I understand the scientific method. And I'm hoping we'll have enough open dialogue and we can create this space that doctors can openly speak with one another, because there's no such thing as the science is settled. That is an ideological statement. That is not a scientific statement. So I do hope as many doctors as possible on all sides of this issue get to interact and talk with one another. So there you go. Because I really know nothing about medicine. I really don't. I know nothing. Rupa is also on True North. Yeah, I think she's just it's just her podcast is on True North from what I understand. Buffalo's really bad and the turnpike is closed. Ugh. Why Buffalo always? It's always Buffalo. All right, looks like I'm going to Fort Erie, Queenston Lewison today, and then to Highway 104 to Rochester. Oh, well, yeah, now you know what half of my days. Tao says, Russell Brand was okay, but it only covered things on the surface. It would be neat to see a long-form discussion like Jordan Peterson does with Rex Murphy every now and then. Yeah, he was... It was definitely, he was under definite time constraints, and he had a list of questions sorted out. But they also did explain to me what will happen if he wants to interrupt. They gave kind of an indication, just so they don't have any talking over, and he didn't, so it was great. But yeah, he clearly directed it was an interview, it wasn't a conversation. It was more of a kind of legacy media style interview, but it was great. It was good. There's a lot of things that, listen, I could have talked with Russell Brand for hours and hours about, a lot of the nuance and a lot of the topics that I know he wanted to cover. Maybe we'll do that again soon. I don't know. We need common ground for all Canadians. Exactly. So, me as kind of the downtown Toronto trucker conservative guy, I will work on bridging the gaps with people on the other side, because even though I may not agree with them in their political and philosophical worldview, I understand their worldview often better than they do, their philosophical worldview, should I say. So it is with David. Good morning to you too as well, sir. Thank you for being here. So, yesterday I was going to do a later stream. I was going to talk, because I'm trying to, when I can, be available to people who are out west, and again, kind of want to reach everybody across the political spectrum and across time zones in Canada. And I know a lot of you are out west as well, and aren't necessarily going to be up at 6 in the morning like you are today if you're in BC. So, but I actually ended up canceling it. And the reason I ended up canceling it is a friend of our family, actually a school friend of my brother. When I say school friend, I think from nursery or kindergarten, whatever it was. And our families became, close families throughout my life. Their son passed away, or my brother's friend passed away. He was a few years older than I do. Apparently had a heart attack. And I just thought about, these sorts of things allows you to reflect and think about family and friends and kind of what's important. And, these are kind of the values that we try to have with our convoy. And that's why we focused on peace and love and unity and freedom. And you can also tag on family and hope to that as well. Good morning, Jesse. So the like when it's so funny. I see all these political debates and about adoption and stuff like that, and I'm very pro that, as you can imagine, because I kind of hit the jackpot in my family. I was adopted into a very very loving family and a very I shouldn't, they weren't wealthy. They were middle class. I was surrounded by a bunch of very, very wealthy friends, but my family was not. We were middle class. My parents, basically built themselves up, and so I'm of no. I'm not confused about the fact that I'm privileged. This is why the woke left makes me crazy, because they live in the most privileged time in human history, in the most privileged societies in history. All they do is bitch and complain. All they do is bitch and complain when nobody has ever had it easier than them, right? And so in my case, unlike my biological siblings who had a little bit rougher go than I did, I was very fortunate. And part of this was my family when I was 10 years old. Was when I 10? I think it was when I 10. When I was 10, we my parents bought a cottage, and they bought a cottage on the street of a family friend of ours, and we spent summers and weekends together. And this is the family of the friend who just passed away. So I knew him pretty well. He was very, very close with my brother, one of his oldest friend for sure, and one of his closest friends. And I thought, how do we? You can never reframe people's death as a positive. That's just not possible, obviously. But given the time of year that we're in right now, maybe that's the little bit of solace. I mean, we're all inevitably going to, at some point, just, by math and deduction, at some point in our lives, we're going to lose people around us during the Christmas and holiday season. And it just occurred to me that, that's probably, if you're ever going to, we're all going to die at some point. And if you're ever going to lose people, wouldn't it be at least best to lose people around the time of the year and the season where everybody is focused on loving one another and coming together, and family becomes their primary concern, and friendships and all that sort of stuff? And as bad as it is, and I feel for this family who I've known my whole life, and that their son has passed away, who we all knew very, very well, spent much of our life together. At least it happened this time of year when everybody is thinking about and focused on their family. So it sucks. It really does suck. But things can always be worse, right? Things can always be harder, and it is what it is. So I don't know if any of you have lost anybody during this time of year, or if you know people who have lost people during this time of the year. I think the best thing is to do what you can to help them. In my case, I'm trying to figure out the funeral details, and I got to get into trying to figure out if it's today, if I'm going to go to the funeral and then head out. But there's still no details available, so I may end up having to miss the funeral. But in my tradition, we have what's called Shiva. What is sitting Shiva? Shiva is when somebody dies. Somebody in the family or next of kin or whatever opens up their home for a week, and it's basically 24/7. Not exactly, but it's kind of the idea that everybody can go and just spend time with the family and help them during the period of mourning. So I'll probably at some point I'll figure out where the Shiva house is, and I'll go to see the family. So for those, and kind of the idea is people. You have in my background, you have a funeral within 24 hours, usually. Not always, but you try to. So not everybody can kind of make it across the country within 24 hours. So you have this whole week-long thing where you can just spend time with the family and see them and all that sort of stuff. I would plan for the funeral with COVID. I missed time many funerals. Trust me, it's weird not having someone close to you. Yeah, no, 100%. Agreed. And, that's one of the most egregious things that our government bureaucracy has done is they've stripped people of this privilege, of this human right to mourn with family. And that's really quite disgusting. It really is. They should not be forgiven for this. Or maybe if they're forgiven, it should never be forgotten. That's what your government bureaucracy did to you. It prevented you from mourning with your family and being with those who were in need for what? Public policy? Like, what's it, the fucking Stasi? Like, everything is about the government policy? Fuck the government. Gives a damn about the government. It's just, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure we all feel the same way. And so it is what it is. D2, good morning. I was adopted as well and was also blessed with to be with a family that was loving and caring. I also connected with 2 bio siblings. So there you go. It's a lot of us have had this experience. I think because the adoption records were opened up many, many years ago for whatever purpose. And so, God bless you. All the best. That's amazing. I'm glad to hear that worked out well for you as well. Ben, we have to forgive or we will be on the carry plane. They don't care. Yeah, I know. I mean, remember, it's kind of, I've also kind of grown up around an eye for an eye, right? So take Fauci, don't take one of his eyes out. But yeah, no, I hear you. I understand that. You can't let those things rot at you forever. But at the same time, it's not about individuals. It's about public policy and adherence to useless bureaucracy. And I mean, the progressives, they're a religion, right? And I think that's why they hated Donald Trump so much. Because look at it this way. If you're one of these far extremist, progressive, I mean, we can go into communists, right? Because there are a lot of them that hold that ideology. That's why they have the hammer and sickle when they're protesting. So it's not me being, hyperbolic saying they're communists when they're holding the communist flag, right? Because I've seen them come to the rallies and, try to agitate people. So I think part of the reason they hated people like Donald Trump or even DeSantis, anybody that they hate politically, it's because in their religion, the government is the deity. The government replaces deity, right? The government is the representative of the collective. And, well, what would you do if, like, in your religion, let's assume you go to church, and somebody tried to replace God with I don't know, Rosie O'Donnell, right? You lose your mind too. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Well, that's why they react so viscerally, because they've been trained and manipulated into buying into this government-based bureaucratic religion. And therefore, the person who's the deity of the religion has to be in line with their values, has to be ordained, because if it's voted in, and it ends up being somebody like a Donald Trump, then they slip into Trump derangement syndrome, which I think was programmed with a lot of the messaging during the campaign and continues to do so. Jesse, Ben, I was raised on Eye for an Eye too. It was the 70s, but we have to have change for the snowflakes. Participation ribbons, yeah, exactly. Participation trophies, right? Everybody's got to get a trophy no matter what. Hold the ones at the top accountable and forgive anyone adjacent to them. Otherwise, it will be an endless crusade. Yes, however, there's a little asterisk, I would say. When you look at our politicians in Canada or any other country, right, you understand they have no power, right? Like, they have no power. The leader has more power, the leader of a political power, but even he has all these constraints with different lobby firms and different special interests that are pulling him in 20 different directions, right? The truly evil people are the ones that you don't see, the ones who are pulling the strings. Sometimes it's like a chief of staff, Famously in Canada, we had Jerry Butts was chief of staff, and now Katie Telford. And you saw what an arrogant cunt she was at the commission. Oops, but she was. Sorry. I picked it up from an Australian friend. But yes, that's what she was. And you saw her how she was at the testimony. Those are the people who hold all the power in politics. I don't mean specifically chief of staff, but people who are lobbyists, who lobby those chief of staff, people behind the scenes who run, dummy campaigns or sort of these false narratives around false activists. Like this is the mechanism of what goes on. Those are the people who hold the power. The people who you're voting for in the nomination, they're just a tool at this point. Because I know I've seen how this works because I went through it. I was a candidate myself, and I got to know many of them, and I got to know how it all works. And, I used to think being in Latin America that, political corruption there was awful. It was nothing compared to what's happening in Canada right now. Like, wow, we're like the Mexican PRI on steroids. If you don't know, the PRI was in power for 72 years straight in Mexico. Actually, we're surrounded by Marxists, a la Antonio Gramsci in our government, Moreso in the United States, but Trudeau is far left progressive ideologue. I think Trudeau is too stupid to be ideological about any sort of worldview. He's too stupid and lazy. He's not well read. He's, as he once said, just the relationships manager. They kind of wheel him out on stage, give him a script, or give him an idea of what he's got to talk about, and he talks about it. He has no idea what's going on. He's a complete airhead. For all the people who are buying into the, Trudeau's making a decision about this, you don't understand how it actually operates. Trudeau is just a tool. He has no clue what's going on. And I've had people in the Liberal Party explain that to me. People are disenfranchised from the Trudeau era. People get mad when I say that too out of anger. British foster parents will do that to you. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what Katie is, right? Katie Telford, see you on Tuesday. Sorry, see you next Tuesday. On Tuesday, what are we doing? Robert says, one adjacent to it are often enablers, as Benjamin said, the ones you don't see. Yeah, those are the people. I mean, I know the list of names. And I know far more names than they think I even know. Like, I know where the money is coming from. And I know the countries the money's coming from. Much of the money is not even coming from within Canada. Most of it is, but some of the money is coming from other places, right? And that's just to manipulate all of you. I mean, that's how the whole structure works. So when you're thinking, my MP or MPP is lying to me or whatever, it's like, well, of course they are, but they have, 3 layers or 4 layers of people on top of them telling them what to do. It's the worst and most thankless job in the world, in my opinion. Why anyone would do it, I have no idea. It might have been vague with adjacent. I meant that those who were swept up in the scheme. And yeah, okay, I get you. Yeah, we're all kind of on the same page. So Trudeau is a young Biden. Yeah, they're both complete empty vessels. It's the same strategy that's being used by the cultural Marxists. Cultural Marxists, that's part of it, but there's also the corporatization of these woke corporations that are controlling them. That's a part of it as well. And we have the same strategy operating in the U.S. and Canada. One, you have a guy who's clearly got very severe dementia. Any doctor in the world will look at him walking and say he has dementia gait. I've had doctors tell me that. They can tell just by looking at him. By the way he walks, he's got severe dementia. So that's on the Biden side, and it's been like that for a while. And in Trudeau, it's the same thing. Well, okay, you just have an airhead. You have a vapid airhead who has no idea and doesn't even care. Like, he just doesn't care. He wants the lifestyle. He wants to hop on the jet, and he wants to mimic his father and be a state leader, a statesman, and fly around the world and have influence. And you see how it blows up in his face. You've seen all the videos, how he's treated at the United Nations or when he goes to any of these conferences, they all know he's an airhead, an empty vessel. He's just a costume in a suit. So whatever. But at least we understand that's how it works. So it's all the people behind the scenes, in the case of the Liberal Party in Canada, the PMO. But the good thing is, from what I'm hearing of people in the Liberal Party, that it's really just a small group of 20 people that worked to get Trudeau elected as leader. And now they're all isolated and by themselves. The rest of the party hates them. A lot of people in the Liberal Party support it because of business dealings. That's why most of Bay Street is Liberal, because there are business ties, even though they say they don't want to be political. It's completely political. And they hate him, but they vote for him because that's in their best interest from a business perspective. And that's what's left of the base. I mean, it's no coincidence that what is it, 30% or just under 30% of GDP, Canada's GDP, is linked back to the government. But the Liberal Party's got, what, 25%? Is that what they got, 30% in the popular vote in the last election, which is roughly 20% of Canadian citizens? Something like that, right? Yeah, of course. There's all people with business ties that are voting for it. So we're the Mexican PRI in the 1990s, is what it is. China, you better get off worrying about those who own and control the West's money supply. Bitcoin. Yeah, 100%. The Trudeau Foundation is well known amongst anybody in government knows, or at least understands how government works and is in government, knows that the Trudeau Foundation has been a money laundering operation for CCP contributions since Trudeau got into power. I mean, that's kind of, everybody knows that. All right, whatever. But Canadians are too lazy to care. All right, well, whatever. Wrote the book on cultural Marxism. There's an episode of Stephen Hicks's podcast that we released called "Is Postmodernism Neo-Marxist? Yes, No, and Sort of." And Stephen had a podcast with Jordan Peterson, actually, on that topic around the time where we released that episode, and it was quite interesting. The Liberal Party was right now is a little more than wholly owned subsidiary of the United States Democratic Party. But listen, the Conservative Party is no better. The Conservative Party is equally corrupt. All these parties are all corrupt. All of them. They're all corrupt. And but whatever, we need some sort of change, and something's got to happen, right? We can't keep going on the trajectory that we're on. What'll happen is, in my estimation, you'll get the Conservatives elected whenever the next election will be. I thought it would be by the end of the year. Maybe it's going to be by spring. But if it's by spring, you got to give me credit for that. Come on, give me a few months leeway, right? But I think we'll have an election this spring. And if the Conservatives don't screw it up, which they will, but if they don't, then you'll end up with Pierre Poilievre, who will be exactly like Doug Ford, in my opinion. He'll continue on the same trajectory. He'll slow things down a little bit. As somebody said, Conservatives do what the Liberals do at the speed limit, and that's because none of you push hard again. You don't push hard against them. All right, well, if everybody's going to treat our politicians like they're deity, and we all have to, they're these great human beings, no, they're part of a government bureaucracy, right? You need to push them. If you don't push them, they're going to do what whoever pushes them do. And Canadians don't understand that. It's so frustrating. I know some really sweet people, very wealthy Canadians, a whole bunch of them, that help different candidates. And, they'll donate money. They'll get money donations to politicians and then ask them for a favor. I'm like, that's not how it works. No, you need to push them. And, the foreign entities that are meddling in politics in Canada, they understand that. They use force because that's what politicians respond to, force. David, Brompham family. No, not the Brompham family. They're not... They're liberals. They're not connected to the Conservatives at all. how influential. Well, one of the thing is, we got to get away from the leftist sort of trap of collectivizing everybody, right? Like the Bronfman family. Well, it's a big family. Many of them are donors to the Liberal Party, but not all of them. Some of them are not even involved in politics. Some of them support conservatives. So we got it's very easy for us to kind of label groups and collectivize them. They do that to the Jewish community all the time, right? Like, oh, all the Jews think what? It's like, hey, listen, most people who screwed me over in my life were Jewish. That's the way it is. It's not because they're Jewish. It's just because I grew up in a culture around many people from that group, but they're all different. And I've also been screwed over by, all sorts of other groups, right? I hear people always, it's so funny, it's comical. They talk about, what's the name of that banking conglomerate? Rothschild. That's the smallest banking conglomerate. They have the least power of all the banking conglomerates. It's kind of like, just people are good and bad, and there's good and bad people in every group. And we got to get away from this. It's innate to us as part of pattern seeking recognition that, okay, we see an individual, we see, a small group of people, they behave in a certain way, therefore they all behave that way. And that is further from the truth. That's not how we are. That's why we need to focus on individualism and stuff like that. I know I'm getting to spicy topics. It's a good thing I'm not monetized now, because this would be it'd be so demonetized right now. That's why I try to get my friends to vote for the PPC, not the perfect alternative. No, they're just as corrupt. I'm sorry. They're just as corrupt. They're no different. If you think the PPC is different from the Conservatives, I'm sorry. And I'm not saying, because I have a lot of friends in both parties. That's why you vote for who you want, right? But let's get beyond this fantasy that we think any of them are different. There's good people in all parties. That's just the way it is. But it's the same party political structure. And you'll be really disappointed if you think otherwise. I'm already cringing to hearing about it. I'll have to check out after I get coffee in me. Yeah, well, listen, it's all cringeworthy, but what are you going to do? But listen, as long as you understand that this is the way the world works, then things won't bother you so much, right? You won't get so emotionally invested in stuff. You won't get so emotional, like, the big problem that we get told by the political class is, oh, this one leader, this one politician, he's going to make all the difference. Like, no, that's a cartoonish narrative of how the world works. Change happens slowly, incrementally, and generationally. And, it was Breitbart who said famously that politics is downstream from culture. That is true. The politicians just follow what they call. They're just catching up to wokeness, right? The wokeness started in 2013. We're here, 10 years later is when it's infested in all our government institutions. It took them 10 years. But you see the pushback is now going in the opposite direction, which means 10 years from now, our politicians will have caught up. So it's not about one individual, whatever. It's just this is how society works. And it's cyclical. So we just all got to be patient and keep pushing back. And eventually things will change. It'll work out, right? Once a nation parts the control of its currency and its credit, it matters not who makes the nation's laws. Usually, once in control, will wreck any nation. Was it Lenin who said that? Was Stalin talked about controlling the currency? Or was that the... one of the banking conglomerates? It's a famous quote. I know you're talking about. I just can't remember the attribution of the quote. But, that's why, listen, for people who don't understand Bitcoin, one day maybe you will, because that's what it is. It's the separation of money and state. You want your government to get out of your life and have less control, then start putting some of your assets, not all of it, but some of your assets into the off-ramp. Would be nice to have the PPC win some seats. I guess so. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I have a lot of friends in the PPC and the CPC, and they get upset when I talk about the party politics. So I'm just going to I don't want people to get upset. I need to get people to unify. And when you people support who they support, I'm going to try to be supportive of everybody because I don't want to get mixed up in the party politics, at least on the federal level. The provincial level is a lot more. I think that's where the solution is going to be, to be entirely honest, moving forward. But we'll see what happens. People will. Okay, well, now we're see this. Once you mention a political party, then all the chat becomes about politics. Until we control the issue of currency, is restore the government, recognize it is most sacred responsibility. All talk of the sovereignty of parliament and democracy is idle. Yeah, and like it's so funny. When you hear them say democracy all the time, what they mean is control when they're regurgitating their nonsense. And I just care about freedom, right? Where does freedom come from? Does freedom come from democracy? I don't know. Democracy in our current form can also lead to tyranny of the majority, right? So, it's having binary views on things in general is just dangerous. We got to understand the complexity and the positives and negatives of everything, because life is all about trade-offs. Everything is a trade-off. Feudal, yeah. Okay, great. I got that. Anyways, okay. I'm rambling on to stuff. But thank you all for your comments. You guys are great. And our next federal government needs to address the 1.3 trillion national debt, which relates to 5 billion. No, they won't. I mean, they need to, but they won't. They won't. Whenever a government gets elected in Canada, they're just thinking about the next election cycle and retaining power, and that's pretty much it, right? And I don't think it comes from a position of malice. It just says they think, okay, we need to make Canada better. We can't make Canada better if we're voted out in the next, especially if it's a minority government. If it's a minority government, they're always thinking about, okay, we can have election tomorrow. So how can we, retain power? And, okay, sure, we have these extremists on the far left, but we need to make them happy to stay in power. That's, our system is just massively flawed, and I think it's outdated. I think it's antiquated. I like tradition, but I think our entire system could be thrown out in the garbage. It's just horrible. And everybody's afraid to say that because everybody's afraid of change. But it's antiquated. It's designed for the 17th century. It's no longer relevant in the modern world, in my opinion. And until we figure out and I don't know what the solution is, but until we figure out a modern interpretation of how to govern a country and a society in the modern digital era, in the modern world, this is just going to get worse. So the currency is one element of it, for sure. As Albat Witch Wiggler says, and I agree with you 100%, the currency is a part of it, right? So my objective is just to get the CPC and LPC to die out and make way for something new. Yeah, I think you're going to see that'll happen over a generation. There may be a party that even hasn't been established yet that might fill the vacuum for people. Who knows? But good morning from Liverpool, Nova Scotia. Good morning, Jim. I hope you're having an awesome day. And talking a little bit about the little bit of when negative things happen during Christmas, when people lose loved ones or family or friends, which is what happened to my family yesterday. And but that this is the best time of the year when people are thinking and focusing on the importance of family. I think the people who pass this time of year have, they're fortunate that they're going to be, I don't know. I think there's going to be more of an emotional tie to their absence. So it is what it's been. The issue I'm having with this crypto thing right now is literally the registering. Thanks to you, I have piles of help, and so thank you. Bitcoin, not crypto. Bitcoin, not crypto. Very important, Jesse. They're two different things. Crypto is, the centralized ERC20 token. I can't speak today. ERC20 tokens, or tokens that are minted on other chains or parachains or blockchains. Those are crypto. Bitcoin is something into itself, and Bitcoin doesn't have a board of directors, a company. It doesn't have anybody who runs it, no individual center point of failure. It's distributed all over the world. No one controls it. It's like trying to control, I don't know, the cerveza sickness, right? So, see, I'm still learning. Yes, yeah, I know. But don't worry. Don't feel bad about asking that. Like, it's ask whatever you want. Please, there's no such thing as a silly question. Absolutely antiquated is the right word for it. Yeah, because look at, like, this whole system of, you know, you have one dipshit in your local riding who's supposed to know everything, and everybody goes to, but nobody has access to that person. That person is completely controlled by lobby or often foreign interests. In my area, we have fucking communist is our city councilor. This garbage piece of shit is our city councilor, who should be homeless on the street selling pens out of a cup. But this dipshit is been squatting as a city councilor, and she used to be head of the Communist Party of Canada, or at least one of the branches. I think it was Manitoba. Like, this system is gotta be thrown out. It is so horrible how this works. What the solution is, I don't know. I listen. I don't know. I just, it is what it is. But we got to be real about what the system is, because if we're real about it, then at least the anxiety gets removed. So we understand. Okay, it's a game. It's nonsense. It's completely corrupt. Okay, well, now we can. You know, one of the things I loved about Latin America, one of the benefits over North America that I think people are starting to realize is, yeah, there's a lot of corruption in Latin America, but at least you understand the rules. Everybody understands the corruption there. It's an unwritten rule about the mafia and the paramilitaries and the narcos and the government and how it operates, what you can do and what you can't do, what you can get away with, and it's consistent, right? Here, who knows, right? It's like a glitter bomb of corruption all over the place. Like, it's just crazy, you know. But what is the value? What is the value of Bitcoin tied to? It's funny. There's questions in Bitcoin that people struggle to communicate because it takes a while to understand the underlying philosophy of it. Right? Trying to think what is a good way to explain that to somebody who's a Tao. I guess you're kind of new to Bitcoin. What is it tied to? What is the value of gold tied to? Answer that question for gold. You can answer that question for Bitcoin. And, you know, not the fallacious argument of, oh, it's been there for 5,000 years. Okay, but, you know, past performance is no guarantee of future results, right? 5,000 years, great. 13 years of Bitcoin, whatever. If you can answer that for gold, you answer that for Bitcoin. It takes a while once you understand it. Even, you know, somebody like me who's kind of techie, it took me a couple of years to just to philosophically accept this new form of asset that never existed before, right? So it was. I look foolish. So no, you don't. You never look foolish. Come on, you're awesome. Don't worry. Toronto with the bad city councilors. Gee, when did that happen? It's because our system, our political system in the West, attracts garbage, the garbage of our society. The people who are completely useless, incompetent, have no skill sets. Many of them are psychopaths. They couldn't cut it in the public sector because they're so useless, but they're narcissistic because they think they're important and they want to become famous. You know how much of this trash I've met in politics the entire time I've been in it? Like, there's a few people I've met who have some convictions and some ideas and values and want to improve things. But most of them are all the negatives of Paris Hilton with none of her positive. Just ugly, useless sacks of shit who just want to be famous. So they go into politics and they talk about public policy. Like, oh, they're such losers. I wish I could tell you what you can understand what losers so many of these people are. It's so funny. It really is funny. And that's why, you know, people like myself and some others in politics, we just run circles around them constantly. That's why they're so threatened by myself and a couple of other people, because we know how the game works and we know how useless most of them are. Like, it's It's really funny. Gold is a commodity, though. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is considered property under U.S. law in a number of countries. It's regulated as property. So the other thing is, when you look at Bitcoin, there's the Western view, and then there's the rest of the world, as I call it, the United States of not America, that most Westerners forget exists, but is the majority of people in the world. And you kind of gain that sense when you spend some time living in South America, or in the third world, should I say. So in Bitcoin, people look at it as an investment, and I'm trying to get them to understand, especially from the Freedom Convoy, as you notice, it was the only money that could circumvent the banking system and get directly into the hands of truckers. That's the value of Bitcoin that you have if you're in Iran or China or in these oppressive regimes. And we always say, well, that will never happen in Canada. Well, it did, right, at the trucker convoy. But so Westerners usually look at Bitcoin as, well, what's its what sort of investment is it? Is there an asymmetric upside to it or not? Which there is a massive asymmetric upside. But the rest of the world looks at it as like, no. I need to get away from my government. I need to have something that my government can't touch. Gold is very easy for your government to just come into your place and confiscate. Bitcoin is more complicated. That happened to Caribou in Ottawa, where the police raided his place and seized his seed phrases. Now, he didn't know to call a lawyer. Like, he didn't have a lawyer on retainer to say to them, here's my lawyer, you can talk to him first, right, despite the warrant. But if it's in your head, if it's a seed phrase in your head, well, what are they going to tap into your brain? I don't know. But anyways, so that's the value of Bitcoin. And that's why I put 2 chapters on Bitcoin in this book, because it explains to people who are new to it. Jesse, I don't know if you've read it yet. Let me say, I put them you know what? I want to hold this up for you. So, see these 2 chapters at the end. This was Bitcoin's moment right here. See towards the end? Oh, maybe you can't see. I don't know if it's reversed. And what's it called? Bitcoin proves its power. The last 2 chapters. That's why I put them in here, because it's for people who are non-Bitcoiners, just to understand why it's important. And this is why. Well, you want your money linked to Justin Trudeau, the psychopath, the puppet for all the extremists around the world? You want him to have control over your money and have your bank account frozen like I had mine frozen? Trust me, you don't want that. You really don't. And if everybody moves over and has some money in the Bitcoin infrastructure, then at least you have an off-ramp from, clown world dictated by Trudeau and the others like him. Yes, Bitcoin is real money, and it's hard money. That's a good way to describe it. It's hard money. That was an interesting inclusion on Bitcoin in your book. Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate it. And we call when the people in Bitcoin, they call it orange pilling, because the logo for Bitcoin is orange, and that's a mathematical. That was a mathematical conclusion. I can't remember what it was, but something in Bitcoin, they took a series of numbers and then figured out what are those numbers on I think it was on the Pantone chart, and it ended up being orange, and that's why they made it orange. So Bitcoin we call it orange pilling people, and I'm really soft with it. I usually don't talk this much about Bitcoin here. I try not to shove it down people's throats, because I know it can be really confusing. It was confusing for me as well, but after a while, I finally understood it. When I watched and read enough stuff on it, I finally understood. We heard Christmas Day. The World Unity Convoy 2023 is not going to Ottawa. It was going to Winnipeg, February 17th through 21st, is what I heard. So no convoy to Ottawa. Yes, Jimmy, I tried repeatedly. I've been doing this for 10 months to people to tell them, stop convoying. The government needs a boogeyman right now. We still don't have a report from the commission. We're going to have an election in the spring. Do not help Trudeau. and which is all a convoy would do, because they'll just point it to it. Because remember, all they do is propaganda. We're in a propaganda war with the government. And all this would give something to the government. So I suggested, and I wasn't the only one, by the way. Lots of other people felt the same way as me. I suggested celebrate the convoy, have an event, have town squares events, barbecues, bring people together with a bunch of truckers in your town or your city or whatever. Do an event just to celebrate February 14th, the day of love, that we see it as a day of love. But the government of Canada turned it into Canada's equivalent of martial law and beat the crap and started the motion into eventually beating the crap out of Canadian citizens who were the most peaceful protest in Canadian history. That's what we got to do. So from what I understand, they've moved things to Winnipeg. I have been asked to speak there, but I'm quite concerned with Mr. What's his name? That crazy guy that was causing us so much problems in Ottawa. Bowder. From what I understand, he has now aligned himself with members of Antifa. So, because he's an idiot. So what's going to happen? Will they show up and have Antifa showing up and stirring up violence? And then, oh, look, the convoy is violent. That's what I'm guessing is probably going to happen. But I'm just still waiting to see. So I would be very, very careful right now, and it is what it is. I know nothing of Bitcoin, so is it $1 on paper for $1 in Bitcoin? No. Each Bitcoin has a value that's driven by market forces, and right now it's what, $16,000-$17,000 Canadian. I know some people who got Bitcoin at 9 cents a Bitcoin, by the way. In 2010, 2009 when he started mining, I can't remember. A seed phrase is basically the combination. So it's a series of words, and that is your combination to your Bitcoin that's on the blockchain. And if you lose the seed phrase, you'll lose all your money. So it's very important that you treat that very seriously. With great responsibility and independence, with great freedom and independence comes great responsibility. You're good. The letter was in reverse. I can understand that. Why can't the government touch Bitcoin? Because why can't the government ban coronavirus? This is kind of the analogy I'm starting to use that people kind of understand. It's distributed on millions of computers around the world. So you'd have to shut down the entire internet just to temporarily stop Bitcoin. What would that do to the rest of the financial services industry or the rest of the world? It would destroy the world. We're not in a world now where we could turn off the internet. That's just not reality anymore. And so as long as there is one device in the world that has the Bitcoin ledger, and the ledger meaning basically the database, then Bitcoin will always survive. You can attack it. You can shut it down in one country or one area. Well, not shut it. You can't really shut it down. But even when they try to ban it, like South Korea banned Bitcoin. And what happened was it drove a 30% premium on Bitcoin. People still wanted it. They would just get it from wallets outside of South Korea, to the point the South Korean government realized, okay, we can't really ban this thing because it's like banning coronavirus. So they reversed the ban on Bitcoin. And that's what you saw in the at the Canadian trucker convoy, where the only money that got through to the truckers was the Bitcoin. The government shut down all of us, everybody else, all of our bank accounts, froze people's bank accounts. I did that that Substack about Stephen in Quebec, who had all his bank accounts terminated. I keep hitting this. Had it all terminated a week after the convoy, despite the fact he never even had a truck in Ottawa. So that's what happens when you're on the fiat banking system. Bitcoin is completely removed. No central entity controls it. It runs itself through all of these nodes and that sort of stuff. Sandy, can you do a session on Bitcoin? I would love to. I just don't know. I was always worried that you guys wouldn't be interested in it because I do a lot of Twitter spaces in the Bitcoin space. I've spoken at a couple of Bitcoin events. I'm going to be speaking as a keynote speaker at the first ever Bitcoin Canada conference. So you may know I spoke at Bitcoin Miami. We're having a big conference in Canada this year, and I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers and signing books there as well. But yeah, I can do a little bit of a session on Bitcoin if you want. But yeah, Twitter Spaces, I'm there all the time. And it would be my pleasure. If you want me to talk about it here, I will. Maybe we'll do that on like a weekend, like on a later day, like when I start later, so more people at West are available. It is confusing, but I'm trying to... I know, listen, Jesse, it was confusing for me. What you need to do is you buy a little bit of $50 of Bitcoin. Imagine you're going to lose it. That's what I did. And get a wallet, get 2 different wallets, start transferring to each other, figuring out how do you move it from one place to another, and that just to get your feet warm. Don't worry about cold wallets and all that sort of stuff. That's important when you have a high value. Just get a hot wallet. I like Exodus. The Bitcoiners get upset with me when I say that because it has all these other clown coins that are not Bitcoin. But I like Exodus because it's simple to use. And just move it from one wallet to another. Well, we can do that together. I'll figure something out, right? Ryan C7, February 14th is my new Canada Day. You and me as well. And if I can, get my life somewhat sorted together, I will hopefully, that's my target date to have the audiobook released. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I'm going to try to have it released for February 14th because I think that's going to be an important day in Canadian history, and as it should be, right? A reunion gathering when Trudeau's out, and Tamara, and whatever, Pat King, and blah blah blah. I still have mixed messages where people just say dumb things. Like I know I'll talk more about that another time. I don't want to. Right now, there's still legal stuff going on, so I don't want to get them in or anybody else into trouble. So that's why I tend to not talk about stuff. Let's let them go through their court procedures. And hopefully everything will be resolved in a positive way, and then we can talk openly about stuff. Yeah, that's right. The guy with the motorhome. He was such a lunatic in Ottawa, like just such an aggressive. He's one of those retards who thinks InfoWars is real. Like he thinks it's all real. The people who think Alex Jones got some things right. Yeah, I got some things right too, because some things were pretty much obvious. But he's one of those people, like, just you're so dumb. So dumb. So dumb. I can't. Anyways, it is what it is. Guy strikes me as someone who had several too many head wounds. Yeah, I call him Angry George Lucas. It's the way to describe him, right? And there was so much babysitting around him in Ottawa. And because he was just going to get us into, him and a couple other people were going to get us into so much trouble. He was not, part of the core. Like what's his name? You watch Jay's video on, Jason LaFarce's video on TikTok. He explains it. He was the reasonable guy in that organization. Really nice guy. Jay's a really good dude who was trying to keep things in check. And so I've been communicating with him for a long time. Jay is reasonable, and Jay just kind of walked away and explained that he did nothing. I ran the website. I did everything. And he was just a showboater, wanted to step in front of a camera. Remember, I said before, in Ottawa, there's no shortage of egos, and there are no shortage of people who just wanted to become famous. It was obnoxious. It was so frustrating because all we're trying to do is put out all these fires and make sure the messages gets out. And all these people are like, oh, I want to go. It's like, oh, stop. It was so. But you know what? At the end of the day, we're not wearing masks. You just had Christmas time, right? You weren't worried about who's going to come for Christmas. You weren't contemplating wearing body condoms because of some scary virus, unless you're one of those ultra lefties, right? If you're a regular person who still has the ability to think critically, you were free this Christmas. How awesome is that? So it was all worthwhile. It was all great. So. Yeah, that's Steve Carlin. He was the leprechaun, the guy from Quebec. I've never met him. I hope to meet him at some point. And check out my Substack, BJdichter.substack.com. There's an article on there that John penned for me to put up there. It was amazing. I'd be very interested in a session of Bitcoin. Oh, okay. Again, I don't want to. I don't want to, force it because people get, I guess now it's a little bit more acceptable just because people understand that, as we outlined here, Bitcoin really was the savior for a lot of people. And but I tend not to talk about it on here. I tend to do it in the Twitter spaces with DJ and a bunch of the other guys. But yeah, I can do some sort of, let me figure something out to do about Bitcoin here, and I will do it for you, I promise. And I do, really, really basic stuff. I tried to teach it to my parents' friends and so that generation, like older boomers. And the type of people that I remember my dad was telling me this one. My dad taught computers, right? That's why I kind of know so much about computers. And I remember him teaching me a lesson about teaching people about computers. And I always remember this when I try to onboard people to Bitcoin. He was trying to teach somebody who was in his, 90s. Somebody who was in their 90s in Florida. And he was trying to just give him sessions, how to use the internet, how to use email. So he explains to this, and this is what the Bitcoin people don't understand because they get really technical really quickly. But my dad was explaining, he was teaching this guy, and he was very different than the students that he taught when he was teaching in a high school. He was explaining to this person that, all right, the first thing he teaches, he taught me as a kid, you always have domain over your computer because you can always turn it off. The computer has a power switch. You can always turn it off and restart whenever you want, right? And so he's explaining this to this 90-plus-year-old gentleman, trying to get him on the internet and into email. And he says, okay, we've turned on the computer. This is what a boot sequence means that it was just starting up. It was checking all its systems. And then now you see a screen. And this is where you're going to work. You don't understand yet, but this is kind of like the desktop of your computer. Like, really basic stuff. And then he says to him, now we're going to turn the computer off. And he says, okay. The older guy says, what do I do? Press the button? He says, no, we need to shut it down. So we need to do the reverse of what we just did. We did a boot up sequence. We need to do kind of like a shutdown sequence. Like you see in the movies when you see like airplanes and stuff like that. Airplanes is a good example. You shut down an airplane, there's not one power switch. There's a bunch of systems that need to be shut down. A computer works the same way. So he says to my dad, okay, well, how do I turn off the computer? He says, okay, well, we're going to have to log off and shut it down. So what we got to do is go to the start button. And the person looks at my dad and says, no, I want to shut it off. He says, yeah, I know. So go to the start button. And he said, I don't want to start. I want to stop. I want to shut down. And sometimes, so we all think differently about stuff, right? This is kind of where subjectivism is sometimes can be useful and important to understand different perspectives. That sometimes people are more literal, and people in the Bitcoin space, we sometimes struggle with that sometimes people still haven't gotten over the hump of, to turn it off, you need to press a word that says start, right? So what do you have to do? You have to explain, okay, start just means starting a procedure. And the procedure we're going to do is to turn it off. So let's start the procedure to turn it off. Even that took this guy a couple of days to get his head around because you're not used to thinking that way. That's also why Bitcoin is going to be confusing for a lot of you in the beginning, Jesse. You don't have to feel guilty or feel like you're dumb. You're not. It's a completely different way of thinking about what is money, what is hard money, and how it operates. And listen, I had the problem too. That's why when I first got a little bit of Bitcoin, I kept moving transactions from different wallets here and there because I didn't understand, wait, how is this working? I don't understand. And eventually, through repetition, you start to get comfortable with it and like, oh, okay, let me scan this QR code. I'll send some Satoshis over there. Don't worry about what that means. And, you do it enough times, you start to accept it, right? Same thing that if you press the start button to shut it down, once you do it enough times, you subconsciously start to accept it. So, anyways, I don't know how we're talking about all this sort of stuff, but today was a little bit of a rambling day. Holy man, you're all over the place. I can see how others would get frustrated with you. Well, thanks, Russ. Russ is being a little trolly today. Russ, this is what happens when you have a lot of talent and a lot of talent stack. Now, you might just know one thing and not have any knowledge beyond that. But some of us who've had many different careers and many different spaces and have done many different things, we will have a range of topics that we can talk about. So Russ, you can go fuck yourself, Russ. Like, what do you want from me? Like, here, can I get rid of Russ? I don't know. I'm just not in the mood for bullshit today. You know, especially where a day after a longtime friend has just passed away, and I'm just not in the mood. Not in the mood for your shit. Anyways. Okay, so the effing QR code without a way. Okay, well, Jesse, no, actually, if you're using Bitcoin on your computer, you can copy and paste the address, right? Don't worry about that. What it means, but it's basically a numerical address to your Bitcoin. But that doesn't mean you don't have to scan the QR codes. The QR code just makes it easier. That's all it does, right? Sandy, bye-bye, Russ. Bye-bye. Not trolly. I have a few Mario levels above you. I don't know. I was always I didn't become a console guy until I was later. You're the one who wanted me to go all over the place. Now we'll talk about PC versus console. How about that, Russ? Anyways, yeah, nobody has time. Listen, what are you going to do? You get used to it. I actually usually enjoy it. I usually kind of enjoy the nonsense back and forth. Today is just kind of like, I don't know. It's Jimmy. You're awesome. Not only, you lose a friend yesterday, and now I got to head out and go to the States knowing that half the highways are closed. How am I going to get to New York tonight? I don't know. But I'll figure it out. But you know what? In all of this, I guess, like, somebody asked me, why aren't you so upset about, firstly, it was my brother's friend. My brother's really upset, and I really feel for him. But, I always have this bias towards positivity, and he passed away in a time where we're all thinking about our families, and we're all thinking about the things that are important to us. We're not focused on the day-to-day nonsense of work usually. You may have just had a wonderful Christmas dinner with your family, or if you celebrate Hanukkah, you would have had, celebrated that with your family, whatever. Now you're going into New Year's, and New Year's is a good time where a lot of people reset. I do that. I'm in a full, automation, condensing all my information, automating my tasks. I use focuses on Apple, so like I'm hyper focused with my focus is linked to my time tracking and all sorts of stuff, and I'm just doing a massive reset right now. And so this is a good time for that. And unfortunately, it's never a good time to lose somebody that you care about and somebody who's been a part of your life most of your life. But if it's going to happen, it's good that it happens now, right? So I don't know. That's how I try to look at it, the positive. And all this other stuff that I talked negatively about, the garbage in politics, I'm telling you so you all know. Because when you all know, then you don't get so emotionally invested in that one politician who's going to come around and he's going to change things. That doesn't happen. That's not reality. And same thing with invention. It's a whole series of events together that will invoke change. And you see this happening online. This is what we all have to celebrate. Like, there's, what's it called? I threw this down. More good news on Twitter this week. Christopher Rufo. This is I think a week old or so, something like that. Breaking. Texas legislators have introduced a bill to abolish, quote, diversity, inclusion, and equity, DI, in the state university system. DI programs have become offices of racialist ideology, I would just say racist ideology, speech suppression, and political indoctrination, and deserve zero taxpayer money. That's something to celebrate. Like, look where we were a year and a half ago, right? When we saw even red states in the U.S. red states in the U.S. being Republican states, by the way. It's the opposite in Canada. That we're going down this neo-progressive, neo-Marxist, this down into the pit of hell, if you will. And now we're seeing people stand up and say, nope, it's enough. And those are politicians. And when I say before, like Andrew Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture. So there's already a political change starting. Things are going to be amazing. It's going to take a couple of years, but we're going to see more rationalized objectivism in our society, and that's what's going to become cool. I just want to pair that to reaching out to people on the other side and helping them kind of pull themselves out of these echo chambers that many of them wouldn't believe in the philosophical underlyings of the echo chamber they're in. They just don't see it. So I think things are going to be great. Well, I can't speak for your friend, but during the convoy, I went to, here we go. I reached to an old scout leader. Since he was the only one I could share it with, I found out he passed away. But he was a no-nonsense, and I could hear him say not to miss out on the convoy on his account. I'm sorry to hear that. I really am sorry to hear that. That really sucks. So, but we got to forge ahead, and we got to move on, and we got to make life better for everybody, and we will. Chris Scott was stuck over in the Netherlands, so he went to France and England because he couldn't get back. I mean, I wouldn't mind going to France and England, but yeah, that's kind of frustrating. That's got to be really infuriating. I agree. Thanks, but it is what it is. Ben seems a bit hit by it, so I figured that might help. Well, we're all going to be hit by people who were in our lives who have passed on. That's just normal. But you got to forge ahead. And, part of it is trying to do good for other people and trying to have a positive impact on other people and help others. Like there really is, that whole, do unto others that will make your life better. I think part of the reason is your subconscious is always watching you. And if your subconscious is watching you do positive things, then your confidence is going to grow. Your positivity is going to grow. You're going to be more at peace with yourself, with your flaws as well, right? Like I do, like I have. Sandy, got to go. See you tomorrow. All right. Well, not tomorrow. I'm going to be in the U.S., but probably on Thursday. I got to go as well. It's getting late, and I don't know how I'm going to deal with this highway system in the U.S. right now, and I've been rambling on for an hour 20 minutes. Listen, I love you all. Jesse, thank you for being here. Sandy, thank you as much. I'll figure out a way to incorporate a little Bitcoin session here. I don't want to overdo it for people. I don't want this to become kind of the Bitcoin space because there's so many other people with Bitcoin spaces who I'm a part of. And I can also put links for people to join once in a while. Jesse, you're on Twitter talking to some of those people, so I hope they'll help. Tao, I'm still not on Twitter. I can't stand the limitation in conversation in how. Okay, so Tao, talking about turning a negative into a positive. I used to agree, except there's one benefit of that, and the benefit is it forces us to be concise. Right now, you can do multi-thread tweets on Twitter, but if it's 20 threads long, it's a little excessive. But it forces you to get a short message out and to do it in a concise manner. And I think that's a skill that a lot of people lack. It's a skill that I lacked. And I think Twitter has helped me improve that. So it was about a wiggler. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. I'm going to try to be safe. And I'm going to take it slow, take a couple of breaks, and just enjoy my time plugged in, listening to some podcasts and some audiobooks. And you guys are all awesome. Jesse, love you all. Love you, Ben. Just stay safe. And yeah, all of you stay safe, please. And hopefully this is a time off for a lot of you at work and you get to have some downtime, some time with friends and family, sometimes to clean up, organize your life, whatever it is. But enjoy it and appreciate every moment. That's what I try to do. So way to be slow and sure, 100%. Okay, well, I got to run. Well, text sucks for... Okay, well, we'll have that conversation another time because me and my friend argue about that all the time. I love you all. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you have an amazing day. Be good to everybody around you. Make you feel better. And yeah, we'll talk to you all soon.